Black Myth Wukong has absolutely destroyed expectations. Elden Ring does not even deserve to be said in the same sentence as Black Myth Wukong. It is not even close. This game is taking over.
Black Myth Wukong is doing so well that it's actually doubled the peak player count of Elden Ring on Steam. Hell,
A little bit more than doubled. At this rate, it's on its way to triple it. Well, probably not gonna happen, but it's gonna come close, and that is insane.
Steam reviews are well north of 100,000, probably like over 140, 150k right now. They're hovering around 96%. I mean, this was literally the most played single player game on Steam ever before most of the Western world even woke up. And that's all, of course, from a team of Chinese indies who basically ditched their AAA jobs to eventually try to make the thing that they wanted to see. So, today I'm going to catch you up on everything you need to know on Black Myth Wukong, even today's sponsor. We're going to level up in real life and have some fun with brilliant.org/. A 13-minute announcement gameplay trailer, and I mean, basically, holy shit. It was a vertical slice of mechanics, environments, boss fights, and that sort of thing. It was visually stunning, almost in the way that you would expect from, say, like a Sony first party, but of course, what was wild is that was a team of 30 people at the time. Now, of course, we all know this went
30 people doing something like this is insane, okay? Even 100 people doing something like this is honestly kind of wow, but yeah.
Really big in the Western media. Over in China,
there was probably a lot of sweatshop work, not gonna lie. Those 30 people probably died in the handfuls and got replaced by new ones just to cut costs. Beautiful. Absolute ruthlessness. I love it.
It also was really successful. It got 10 million views in sites like Bilibili within a day. 10 million may sound like a lot, but remember, it's a big country. We'll get to that shortly. Now, a bit in game science. So, game science, the developer, were formed in 2010 by 7 devs who basically left Tencent. Now, they were working on an MMO at Tencent called Asura that was based on Journey to the West. So, of course, still very similar to Wukong, but basically they
Oh, the Asura, okay.
decided to leave. They formed Game Science, and then Game Science got their teeth on 2 mobile games for ByteDance and NetEase. That basically allowed them to secure some money, and with that, they decided to do Wukong as a full premium
secured some money, he says. Oh no.
Game. Now, the initial marketing success in 2020 then led to a 5% equity investment from Tencent, who are also publishing the game on China on WeGame. And that does mean all those crazy numbers that I talked about at the top of the video, that's not even including people playing on.
Yeah, because China doesn't show on Steam because China can't use Steam. Obviously.
WeGame, which is kind of insane. So, let's talk about what the game actually is. It is a Journey to the West inspired action-adventure game following, of course, the myth of Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, and it's the first in a series, right? So the whole Black Myth thing, if you didn't know what that means, basically Black Myth is the sort of like name of this series, and it's essentially intended to be a number of reimaginings of Chinese folklore. Now, structurally, this isn't some crazy open world game. It is built around boss fights against like big mythological monsters, and that really is what it is for the most part. It is far more of a boss rush style game. I think very much like you can only do so many things when you're dealing with the sorts of budgets and team sizes that they will have had. Therefore, they basically put all of their stonks into bosses, and that essentially means more of a boss rush like scope of game, but very much that.
I don't understand why some people are gonna say and try to claim that that's bad. No, it's not. Okay, yeah, it doesn't have an open world like Elden Ring, but is that really that bad? I don't know.
Let's let them put effort
Probably
into other
not.
things. As an example, you've got lots of different skills and upgrades, and it's a combo-based combat system that's, of course, very much like player expression. Now, they want to be really clear that this is not a Souls-like game. It's kind of leaning more towards maybe like people enjoying like the odd bit of a character action game, you know, maybe a God of War, stuff like that. So more of that, less Souls-like, and in terms of performance, it doesn't seem like any of that has held it back, because the critical reviews have essentially been glowing over in China. Now, that does make a lot of sense. You definitely have a bit of a cooler reception from like global outlets. I've just got to imagine they'll have like less of an affinity for the story, so maybe some things won't hit as.
What do you mean listen of affinity? They're probably paid off by China at this point, because China wants this to be a success most likely at this point. That seems kind of for sure. Again, China cannot just, okay, listen. If you're a developer that comes from China, you don't just magically have the right to publish your game outside of China, which means the CCP said yes to this. So it looks like at the very end, they want this to succeed because they want Chinese culture to take over the West and whatnot, which is an old but gold type of strategy. Let's see how it pays off, Cotton.
As hard, but even with that, it's got an 81% critic average, 71% of critics recommending, and the pros basically are that the boss designs and the actual like combat mechanics are absolutely fantastic. It's of course visually stunning, quite a lot of the storytelling's landing. There are a few cons, basically just people talking about level design being a little narrow in scope, some people not liking that it's a boss rush, and then essentially bugs and that sort of thing. To do just a quote summary that I think captures the global response critically anyway, this is one from VGC. Black Myth Wukong reminds us of a next-generation launch game. It's utterly gorgeous and technically mighty, but its gameplay and narrative leave quite a bit to be desired. So...
Oh no, what will I ever do that some kind of outlet named VGC that I don't even know what it is gonna try and tell me what to think? Oh no, the horrors. Well, I guess it's over, boys. Pack it up. The level design is not as wide and big as VGC, whoever the hell they are, expect us to do. Dude, get out. Get out. No one cares about you game journalists and the crap that you want to spew, okay? Your opinions are useless, mundane, boring, and lame. All of you deserve ropes and 3 branches.
That's, I think, a good encapsulation of how we could think about this game, but most people do actually seem to be enjoying it quite a bit more than that. And most importantly, when put in the right context, that is still an absolutely incredible review, given like where this team came from, the sorts of games they were working on before, and like their overall ambitions. So for your first time, like in a big sort of, I mean, I was going to say AAA premium because that's what it looks like, but I suppose maybe not AAA, but anyway, what we can guarantee is that sales have been goddamn astronomical. I mean, in Steam, like over 2.2 million concurrent players, which is crazy. So this is essentially a perfect result. Now, in the few days running up to this, there were some very odd headlines, and I definitely want to break those down because, well, you know what, they're at the very least kind of interesting. Now, the global marketing for the game seems to be handled by both Game Science and then their marketing partner, Hero Games. There were oddities. No PS5 codes went out before launch, and by various accounts, PC review codes were actually in pretty short supply, and the PC codes themselves only went out the Friday before embargo on the 16th of August, which is, I mean, it's not ideal, but I mean, look, it did kind of work out in the end. But the thing that really got people's attention was the streamer guideline controversy. This is a wacky one. So over the weekend, here's what happened. A document leaked to Reddit and Reset Era that had terms for streamers providing coverage to...
Oh yeah, we know this one. This is either fake or a PR move. This is not real.
Black Myth Wukong. So here's what it says. Do not insult other influencers or players. Do not use any offensive language / humor. Do not include...
Oh, okay. This is... not fake, but definitely a PR stunt, and it has China written all over it.
This is the spicier one. Politics, violence, nudity, feminist propaganda, fetishization, and other content that instigates negative discourse. Do not use trigger words such as quarantine, or isolation, or COVID-19.
Yeah, this is what we saw yesterday, so... yeah, as you can see, this is definitely completely 100% China propaganda. Oh boy, the CCP definitely enjoyed this one.
Do not discuss content related to China's game industry policies, opinions, news, etc. Now, the initial response to this was quite funny because with all of the culture war stuff that's floating about, I think most people looked at this and thought, well, this isn't what the reviewers have got, and this seems to be bait, well-orchestrated bait. But no, it actually turns out that, as verified by multiple independent sources, this is actually true. Now, there are very...
yeah, why wouldn't this not be true, considering this is... again, we talked about this last video, but this is literally stuff that the CCP, aka China's head of states, care about, okay? Everything of that falls exactly in line with what they care about and think that is important. So why would someone craft an elaborate ruse that kind of magically perfectly fits in with the views of the Chinese Communist Party. I wonder.
Typical things in there, like not insulting other streamers, right? Like, that makes sense. The commentary and swearing and nudity is not particularly unusual, but the rest of it is, right? Saying to avoid Chinese game industry policies, COVID, or politics, or feminist propaganda, or fetishization. That is not usually the sort of thing that you see in some content guidelines. Now, I know for some people, they will look at this and think, yeah, well, you know what? The woke mob's just going to kill this, good honest game, so screw it, or, whatever.
How will the woke mob do anything? The woke mobs have lost absolutely all power at this point. They are worthless, shitty shelves of their worthless, shitty lives. And I feel absolutely not a single degree of sadness for that. That's what they deserve.
I mean, it's obviously like, it's a touching on hot button issues, right? So you could see people on either side of said hot button issues maybe having an opinion about like what should actually be in guidelines. Here's the thing that I'll say though, the Streisand effect. So typically if you don't want something to be talked about, the best thing to do is just fly it under the radar. Don't invoke the Streisand effect. If you're not aware, Barbara Streisand had a house. A photographer took a picture of her house. She tried to get that picture taken down through the law, which of course meant that across the nation, there were pictures of Barbara Streisand's house, so everybody knew where it was, hence the Streisand effect. Now, to talk about negative discourse, what they say is feminist propaganda, that maybe hits a little bit differently, though, because there are articles from IGN in 2023 and Eurogamer in 2022, which themselves are building on a 2020 report from SupChina that basically allege toxic/misogynistic behavior at Game Science, and basically there are comments from staff and recruitment materials that are being showed as evidence. And like, just to sidebar this,
no one gives a shit, okay? Hey, listen, if you're gonna make a good game and I'm gonna enjoy the hell out of it, I don't care how many kindergartens, as long as they're not in my country, get sacrificed, okay? 1 to 100, all of them, I don't care. Especially when it's China, by the way. Especially, listen, the more sacrifice, the more blood to the blood god, the better, in my opinion, honestly.
For a second, man, those recruitment posters are something else when you put them through like Google Machine Translate. Now, of course, yeah, machine translation, I'm obviously not leading in that for anything, but the headings are really funny, like forced self-pleasure, fat man die, and must work overtime, with must work overtime being a picture of, let's just say, somebody who would be exposed, if not for a massive can, or, maybe it's just a normal-sized can of Red Bull that is censoring something. So that, certainly you can see how that's a look. Some people will defend it, saying that this is great funny banter. Other people will say, well, that certainly sets a tone for your work environment. What we do know, though, is that Game Science and the marketing teams,
again, who cares?
Are absolutely not interested in addressing any of these. They've dodged questions, basically because this has ended up being a story in Eurogamer and IGN, and then SupChina previously in 2020. And they have, of course, had journalists asking about this, and they've basically just dodged all of those questions. I think most recently they said to PC Gamer, no comment. But of course, if you were thinking strategically and you didn't want this to be talked about, I mean, you wouldn't go and immediately Streisand effect yourself. Which is where another part of the stream.
God, Billiard just... What happened? Did he read about the Streisand thing and then he's like, oh my god, this is the coolest thing in the universe? Because he has been mentioning the Streisand effect for what? A straight up year at this point or something like that? Everything that barely qualifies is now the Streisand effect. Oh my lord. This is worse than Asmongold watching a YouTube video made for children with educational value.
Guidelines is actually key to understanding this entire bloody situation. It says this: by using the game key and creating content, you acknowledge that you have been informed of the following content and that your statements are not related to the marketing team. So I think that's actually what's going on here. The marketing team knows that there is potential for drama here, especially if they've been following, say, Twitter over the last few months. They basically do not want to be culpable for the controversy, hence they do this document that basically says anything you say has got nothing to do with us. We don't know if this is from Game Hero or from Game Science. Maybe if it was from Hero, it would make a little bit more.
No, admittedly, yeah, it's probably a mix of what they don't want you to talk about because, any company that shows China in enough negative of a light, typically risks their leadership position roles vanishing overnight, reappearing with, holes in their heads a couple of years later and saying everything is fine, and then everyone's not happy.
More sense if they're just a little more external to the situation. But overall, I mean, yeah, congratulations, Streisand effect. Anyway, to talk about sales and success,
Kill
that
me
sort
now.
of thing. Well, they passed a lovely little 70 terabytes per second of downloads on Steam, which is, yeah, that's just goofy. Now, this has been the top seller in Steam for most of the week. In China, promo events for this were sold out of Black Myth Wukong related merchandise, such that they don't have stock for like 2 weeks, I believe. This has also managed to get the second highest concurrent player count on Steam of all time, which is just over 2 million, which, means it's beaten Palworld's record. It's actually the most...
Dude, and you know what's the best part about it? Steam's just sitting there relaxing and saying, hey, Gabe, hey, Gabe, look at all this money that we're now getting. And Gabe's like, ah, man. Whatever happens in the gaming industry, Valve wins. It's beautiful.
concurrently played single-player game of all time on Steam. And a lot of that happened before most of the Western audience even woke up and started to play the game.
Actually, let's look at the Steam charts. Steam charts. Black Myth. Oh, here it is. Let's see what's the peak now. No, the peak has not actually changed. If. Yeah, I think that's the peak. I think that's the peak that we are currently sitting here. Well, close enough to 3 times.
Nice to say, interest here from China is absolutely massive. Now, Simon Carlos on his newsletter records that 88.1% of the game's owners at this point, including pre-orders, are based in China. What we can actually do, though, is take a look at the percentage of reviews in different languages. And right now, here's the top 3. 93.52% are simplified Chinese, English is 3.75%, and traditional Chinese is 0.65%.
Dude, it's probably selling like hotcakes in China because the games that are allowed in China are way wildly different than what you see in the West. Again, for those of you who do not know, TikTok's a Chinese thing. Do you know what the TikTok in the West is versus the TikTok in China? It's day and night. In the West, they promote degeneracy. The more degenerate content on TikTok, the better. In China, TikTok is like humble and shit. You will literally never see anything even remotely close to a bad thing on the Chinese TikTok because if you do, your family's gonna vanish overnight. But you know, that's the thing. And yeah, again, it's about learning, being a good person, and all of those things that are inevitably gonna destroy China. Hopefully. Well, actually, inevitably. Like, living in China is literally living in a dystopian hellscape to a degree. Only you don't have the dystopian good parts, aka good technology, unlimited resources, and all of that stuff. You just have the communism.
5%. And that's just in Steam. We've got no idea how this is doing on WeGame, which is a Chinese game distribution platform. Suffice to say, though, it's probably doing quite well. Now, I want to talk just for a second about scale. China's quite big. They have a population of 1.42 billion people. And if I just think about our channel analytics, right? Normally, whenever so I guess like me, my team, probably you guys as viewers, whenever we think of gaming, we're doing so within, I guess, our broadly Western cultural context, which means EU.
Yeah, because China typically has no impact on it.
NA, and a few others. As an example, if I was to just tally up US, EU, UK, Australia, and Canada, that's about like 0.91 billion people. Of course, China's bigger than that. And it will also help for marketing and targeting.
Ah, poor Belliard with his non-understanding of the situation. It's not the fact that China's bigger than that. It has nothing to do with that, in fact. It's the fact that, again, China is very, very tight about what is allowed to be there and what kind of games exist and whatnot. Black Myth Wukong coming in China is probably the best game that they have had in 10 goddamn years. That's the reality of it, okay? Everything else is just some kind of gotcha crap that no one cares. Well, that plenty of people still care about, but you get the point. Black Myth Wukong is probably the best game that has been released in China in 10 goddamn years. It's selling like hotcakes, or the Chinese equivalent, street food dumpling made in gutter oil. Ah, China. There's literally villages that have a 100% cancer rate in China because that's just how good the place is. In any case, yeah.
Targeting that China is a bit more like homogenous, I guess, in terms of like, you know, population, language, that kind of thing. Like historically, one of the things that was always amazing.
China is completely not homogenous at all. There are countless Chinese dialects. China is absolutely not even close to the word of homogenous. Rural life is completely different from urban life. The values are completely different. And man, wait, nice Billiard.
Amazing about the American market is you have like over 300 million people who speak English, which is really, really handy. Whereas, of course, in the EU, like you're going into loads of different jurisdictions that have got loads of different regulations.
And by the way, this is why everyone wants to get into China. Because, again, in China, the moment you just get into the market and you're selling a product that's not even the best that there is, but it's just not trash, you are already creating a situation where you're going to have millions of sales because China just doesn't have anything that's not trash made by themselves. So that's why everyone loves the Chinese market, because the moment you get in there, you just kind of win.
Loads of different languages, which does make like targeting your game's marketing sometimes like a little bit harder. I mean, it's really not as big a problem for a digital product like a game, but I think here though we do see like what's going on pretty obviously. This is based on Chinese like myth, Chinese folklore, really, really big for them culturally. They're an absolutely humongous population, so with Steam China being a thing, it's absolutely not a surprise that we're seeing the success that we're seeing here. Now, the PS5 version is currently number 4 in the UK, it's number 5 in the US as of the morning of launch, and early reports are that it's broadly performing quite well, which is certainly nice to hear given that there weren't like PS5 reviews. So the performance mode hits 60 FPS with VRR support, which is pretty big. Now, there have been some quality mode issues, but seriously, for a game like this, like with a lot of combat, it's more of a boss rush, like, dude, come on, 60 FPS. Like, what the hell? Anyway, altogether, what this is one of the most impressive launches, and it was so before anyone outside of its home country was awake. And that's why I think a lot of the industry is looking at this and thinking, oh, something has woken up, what's going to happen next? So let's talk about industry context. Game Science basically had realized they could be at the forefront of a wave of premium Chinese games, and that they could do it right. Now, technically, it's not the first. You got the likes of Bright Memory Infinite, which was an Xbox Series launch title. It had some allegations of plagiarism in its early development, and it had a 2-hour runtime, which didn't
Yes, anything in China will have.
really land as well as people hoped. That being said, it's actually really damn fun, and it's currently 92% in its Steam rating with 34k reviews. So, I mean, yeah, it didn't set the world on fire, but damn, 34k reviews, like, that is a result. The thing that matters here, though, is that it's proving that premium games are big business in China. Now, we've got PlayStation's China Hero project, which has a wealth of titles from local developers being supported, and both Tencent and NetEase are also establishing homegrown studios to take advantage of local talent. Again, what was this? This was people who were working on like an MMO with Tencent. They didn't want to do that anymore. They wanted to make like, you know, big single player immersive game with like narrative and all of that. So they went and did that. The thing that
Very cool. Anyway, Black Myth Wukong, kind of slaying it currently. Let's see how it turns out in the future. Anyway, bye-bye.